So remember that, Mary.
Hello, welcome to LTV's Cityscope. My name is Carl Pimerini. I'll be your host for the next half hour, and we're going to be talking about things that are happening right here in Leominster, Massachusetts. Legendary Leominster, Massachusetts. So I've got some exciting guests here, and they're very dynamic. So I'm going to introduce them to you right now. So let's take a peek and see who we have here in the studios for this week's Cityscope. Okay, here we are. The dynamic historians themselves, world famous. We have, on your left, Ron Gerard from the Leominster Historical Commission.
And this year's Citizen and Award winner.
Yes, let's not forget, Citizen of the Year for Leominster, Massachusetts.
That's correct.
He's working on a nationwide award, and we'll see how that works out. Next to him is Mary Marotta of the Leominster Historical Society. Hi, Mary.
Hi,
again.
Ron.
Seems like we were just together on another show, but that's another story. So we're going to get to see what you guys are working on right now. You're working on multiple projects. Ron also volunteers here at Leominster Access Television and does a lot of shooting for us on top of what he does for the Historical Commission and the Historical Society. He volunteers at the Historical Society also, right, Ron?
Yes, and I also volunteer for the Leominster Public Library as well.
Right.
So I'm having the time of my life.
That's good.
I really enjoy what I do. I enjoy the great contacts I've been making. I really enjoy working with this young lady over here. We get along like two peas in a pod, and it's been a real pleasure working with Mary and with the Leominster Historical Society in general, and doing projects for them that they ask me to do from time to time, and I've really been enjoying it, Mary.
Yeah, and being able to work with the different organizations.
Yeah.
We come up with some more interesting things and more different stories, and had some great opportunities that we otherwise wouldn't have had.
So it's interesting. You two work well together. You know, you kind of blend well. Ron's talents and Mary's talents kind of jive very well. There's areas where Ron likes to get assistance, and there's areas where Mary likes to get, and you work well together.
We've both been learning a lot.
Yeah.
And most of you guys know that right now that we produce and write a show called This Month in Leominster History.
Right.
It's based on a Mike Kerrigan research project, which is another fellow that we volunteer with the Historical Commission. And it's based on calendar events on this month in Leominster history, 50 years ago today, 100 years ago today, and that type of thing. And so what Mary and I do, we gather up photos and information, and put stories together with the events, and then we talk about them with the shows in our show. Mm-hmm. And one day I got an idea and I approached Mary about it. I says, I think it would be very interesting if we went on location to all these events and then talk about the events while we're on location. Now, even though, for instance, in September, we got coming up is the music hall burnt down at the end of September, okay? Now, don't forget, we're filming a month ahead of time.
Yes.
So we have that coming up on the timeline. So I'll go down and film that with Mary, and we'll talk about the event on location and show what it looked like now, and compare it with photographs from the past.
That's great.
And if I have video, I'll even put video in there from the past. And sometimes I do, but not far back to 1927.
Right.
But there's sometimes that I do have video, and it's interesting to show the difference between the past and present.
The history of the month is a great idea, and it's so great that Mike Kerrigan kind of got that initiated and did a lot of the research. But on top of that, you guys have to kind of do a little more digging sometimes to get the right visuals and stuff to go along with the information that Mike's dug up.
Well, that's correct. We not only have to do visuals, but we have to do the research on the stories So we're taking advantage of Ron's skills with his video and his filming and his scanning of pictures, and my ability to go into the archives at the Historical Society, and also all kinds of research to find out what are the backgrounds behind these events, what caused them, what were the people like, what was the time like. And then on top of that, we're adding, let's go to that place and experience that place where that event happened.
Oh, well,
And it just brings a whole nother dimension to the show.
And a perfect example, I believe one of our first shows, you went up to the Indian border and you was demonstrating how
That was wonderful.
how the Indians would take it with that little with that brick there, and you were crushing up the sunflower seeds.
Well, it's a mortar and a pestle.
Yeah, pestle. Thank
and so
you.
there's a mortar on Monument Square, and I thought to myself, well, that mortar hasn't been used in a long, long time. Now, a mortar and a pestle is what the apothecaries used to use to crush up pills.
Yes.
But even before that, Indians used them to crush up seeds and nuts and stuff. And so we have an Indian mortar there. So I went into the boxes at this Historical Society and found a pestle. And I bought some sunflower seeds, and we went down there and tried it out. Saw how it worked. It works.
I know.
It works just fine.
So there's which one's the mortar is the bowl?
The mortar is the bowl part.
And there's one on Monument Square.
A mortar, yep.
In one of the
Indian mortar.
So how long has that been there? I'm putting you on the spot because I've been a lifelong member of Leominster here, and I've never knew that there was a mortar that, sitting down there.
It's one of the earliest artifacts that was placed down there. It was placed there by the Historical Society.
Wow.
Someone apparently found it when they were digging up a farm in before Whitney Field was even a playground. It was a farm.
Yes. Yep.
And it was found there.
Wow.
And the one of the earliest things the Historical Society set up.
That's neat. I mean, it's really cool, and I liked how we saw how you demonstrated, how they crushed the seeds.
Yeah. So coming up on a calendar event every month to month, it's been a really great working with Mary and we're feeding off each other's ideas. Well, how can we do the Reprove This Month show and to make it more interesting for people to watch? And I've been getting such a great positive responses. I think I told you this and told Mary this a number of times. I'll be walking down the street. I'll be in store. I won't mention any names, but I'll be in local stores doing shopping or whatever. And girls will come up to me and hug me and kiss me and thank me just for putting the shows.
That's always a good thing.
It's funny. My wife's cracking up laughing. You know. And so it's been a good experience. In other words, I really enjoy what I do, and I really enjoy working with Mary.
It's amazing. People don't realize how much work is involved. I mean, Ron does a lot of what he calls scanning, which means to us digitizing images from either the original negatives or prints, whatever. And that is, it's a process. It takes quite a while, doesn't it, Ron? I mean, I know you guys have equipment.
Typically I'm scanning at a 1200 resolution because I talked about this before, Mary, and anybody out there that not too familiar with scanning. You always want to try to scan at the highest of the resolution because you're pulling out more detail off of the negative or the photograph, and that makes a difference down the road. And if you're going to do it, you might as well do it right the first time.
That's right.
And you had mentioned work. This is love for me. I love what I do, so it's not work.
Right.
And I never feel as if anybody has ever taken advantage of me because of my skills. But when I go there at the Gallagher Building at 5:30 in the morning, I'm usually there 5, sometimes 6, sometimes 7 days a week, and I put on my music and I'm in my own little world, and I'm scanning and I'm cataloging and I'm putting together our show, and I'm doing research for images, and I just enjoy it. Yeah. It's like I said, I'm having the time of my life.
And he's done that for the society also.
He has,
right?
and the important thing about the scanning that Ron brings in is not just feeding negatives through a machine. He organizes the files, and he makes it so that you can search for different things on the photos. He keeps the information if there's stuff written on the back of a photo or on the edge of a slide. He keeps them organized. So it's an important digitizing framework for later researchers.
Right.
It's pretty impressive.
It is impressive because, number one, scanning has got to be the most boring thing on the planet. It's very boring. And he scanned literally thousands, tens of thousands of images and documents for both societies, both groups. And people don't realize the detail that you get from these scans, from these photographs that are sometimes 100, 150 years old. You're seeing things on these scans that first have never been publicly seen before because they've never been scanned. And secondly, the detail is phenomenal. Because with today's technology on your devices, you can zoom into these photos and really go into them and really pick out things. Wow, look, there's a horseshoe. Or look, there's a horse trough. Look, there's a whatever. And you can really see how people lived back then and see. It's excellent.
Oh,
It's another kind of time travel.
Yeah, exactly like you just said. When I'm scanning, for instance, the Roland Lane collection, right? When Linda asked me about the project, I had gotten the box from the society, and the box was such a mess. I mean, it had like 4,400 images in them. And how I know there was 4,400 images is because I did a right properties click when I got done the final product, and that's how much it told me how much was in there. But these negatives are going every possible way but loose that you could possibly imagine. So I had them well organized by sporting events, by retail, by events, by weddings.
Yeah.
And that's how I scan them. And the hardest part for me, once I mentioned this to you about, well, you got a shiny side and you got like kind of a rough side, and you told me I think it was the shiny side that went on the negative slide first, and that's the correct direction in which. And once I mastered that, the rest was easy.
Because that's a big mistake a lot of people who do this scanning do, is they mistakenly either will reverse the negative and scan it the wrong way, or it's very easy to scan things incorrectly.
Yes,
if it's reversed, it may skew what you're looking at to the point where, well, where was this building? It doesn't look, but it's because it was scanned incorrectly. So that's very important that things are scanned right.
Yeah, and in addition to that, I crop out the images, I pull them into Photoshop, I do some level adjustments to clean them up a little bit, and then I relabel them according to how they should be labeled.
That's very good. Now, I'm assuming that these images are well backed up and stored in multiple locations.
That's correct.
They're all digital files now.
I made a nice contact sheet, or a PDF they call it, and I gave the society a copy. I made a copy of it, and I put them in another location. So I got it backed up on 3 locations, and then the society puts them up on their server as well. So we have them backed up in a number of different locations for future generations to have.
Now, I'm sure Mary can attest to the fact that by organizing them the way he is, it's going to make finding things in the future that much easier. Because the more descriptive you can get in following certain guidelines for archival procedure, the better your chances of finding something in the future, the ease of finding things in the future. But just doing that part of it is making sure that there's a description for every. It could be a basic description for every photo that's scanned. It's extremely important.
And we're using these photo collections. We're finding photos for our stories and for our monthly events, and so we're actually on the using end too. So we know what it's like to try to find the exact same photo, or find a person's name, to find their face.
A perfect example was the Whitney Field area when we were kids growing up and playing in the pool ground. In the Roland Lane collection, I came across a half a dozen photographs with. Mayor Harper was in a few of those photographs. And these kids were cleaning out the pool area. They could have been Boy Scouts. There's a Boy Scout project back in the 60s. And they were cleaning out the pool area. And you could clearly see in the background, the stores in the background. And so these are images that, like you said, nobody had never seen before. So Friday we're planning on this, well, at least I don't know if Mary was, but I'm planning an excursion Friday afternoon. I want to go down to that area from Spring Street and just for my own I'm reliving my childhood is what
That's
I'm doing.
good.
So I want to see for myself, and I want to actually see the steps that everybody keeps talking about. Now, we went down there Sunday, and I took a couple of photos with my camera, and it wasn't safe for me to be going down that way. But
you got to use your head.
you know, but
yeah.
I got to be, yeah, exactly.
That's why I may not be going down.
You know, but,
Yeah, you got to.
but we're gonna go from the back side of it where it's safer to walk where that path is.
Good.
But, you know, I promise we're going to get to the projects you guys are working on in a second, but I think the detail of the amount of work you guys do is very important to people to know the amount of detail that's involved in doing this.
Yeah.
And why we're doing it. People come on Facebook or they come and talk to us and they say, well, I grew up in Leominster too.
Right.
I remember those steps. I remember that swimming pool. I remember spending many days in the summer, you know, playing at the swimming pool and doing arts and crafts. It's bringing it back for a lot of people, and that's an important part of what we do.
And another thing, a lot of feedback that I always get, Carl, is that a lot of people no longer live in Leominster.
Right.
So when they're seeing our videos that we go around the streets and they've got a nice background, it kind of brings it back home again, you know. And I get we get a lot of great positive feedback with the video.
Now, the great part too is you're not just doing things that are 100 years old. You know, you're dealing with collections that may be, you know, 30, 50 years old, from different photographers that worked in Leominster.
That's correct.
And well, it's so lucky that these guys had the vision to donate these negatives to the society or the commission, so that these images exist from the 1940s, the 30s, the 60s. You know, they exist, and people are going to understand that it's very important. If you have large photo collections like this and you're not sure what to do with them, but you think they may be interesting for the city, you know, contact the commission of the society and, you know, see if you can work out a deal to donate your images. Even modern photographers, if they've got hard drives full of images that they've taken, you know, in and around the city,
Indoor video, like remember last year that Holly Courage, she had quite a family collection of video, and I felt bad for Jack because I came in with about 200 reels of videotape that Jack Sully did the video transferring, you know, which we really appreciate that.
And you had your grandmother.
And my grandmother's collection. Remember our first interview together?
Cool.
That was interesting. And more of this will turn up, I'm sure, as we go along. People will find films in their house and things, and they may want to wonder what's on them, and might find some hidden gems. So that's a good thing. Okay, so let's now switch gears a little bit. Okay, so some of these. What are some of the projects you're working on right now and some ideas you have in the future?
Okay, well,
go ahead, you start.
I would say that two things we're working on the September events, of course, and there's 57 events on the September calendar. So we will be doing our talk show, and we'll probably have maybe even 2 talk shows to cover enough of the stories that we want to talk about.
We're planning on bringing in 2 experts to help us with the separate interviews we're going to be doing with these experts talking about these events. So that's going to be pretty interesting, Mary.
Yeah, and we've already gone out on location for a couple of them, right?
Yeah, and I don't. Was there fire last month there? This past month there, when there's King's Corner fire there? That remember we went up and filmed that. Yeah. So
how about that, right? A couple of months ago, we went up to King's Corner because we had an event that had to do with King's Corner, and we were videotaping around. And I said, "Look, there's a car wash, and it says King's Corner Car Wash." Of course, it was closed, but it was a big sign. Yeah. So we took a good video of it and it's on our show. And then what happened a couple of weeks ago? That car wash building burned down. So I felt it was pretty good that we filmed it before that happened.
Well, people don't realize, how important it is to capture images of town as it exists today, and because people just assume it's always going to be like that, it's always going to be there, they don't have to take pictures, but it's important to capture those types of things.
I think so.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Now, so the monthly project's a tremendous amount of work.
Yeah.
You got to go to locations, and I love the way you try to go to these locations and look at an old-time photo and then try to show you the same view, then and now. I think that's a great, people really relate, and they really like those things because they can see how things have changed and how history has changed things. So,
yeah.
Now, what's the other project, the Mary Rowlandson project you're working on?
Well, I'm going to let Mary talk about that,
Okay.
but that's a secret.
Okay, we're not going to tell anybody.
Now. It's out from under the covers now.
Well,
you didn't say not to go there. So
I think I'll let Mary talk about it because I think that's one of Mary's. This is Mary's favorite story to tell, and we'll go into it as she talks about it.
Well, it's been about 5 years since I started researching Mary Rowlandson and the whole story of the attack on Lancaster.
Yes.
And it was way back in 1675, so it predates the state of Massachusetts. It was just a colony at the time, and the people were Englishmen, and they were trying to figure out how to set up habitations here in Massachusetts that would last. And so she wrote a book about her experience in captivity. She was in captivity for 3 months in the wintertime, and she had traveled with the Indians all around central Massachusetts, a really interesting kind of a journey that she took. And a lot of those places look very similar today, the way they did back then, I think.
Right.
And so back in 2015, I got in my car and I traveled to these places and got out of my car and took photographs and thought about who she was and what was going on by myself. And then I was talking with Ron about this and how excited I was about the ability to go to these places, and he said, well, why don't we videotape, why don't we film there? And I knew then that I was finally, all this work that I had been doing for the last few years was going to come together.
Now, is that the famous Redemption Rock story?
That's exactly
Is that what that's about?
That's
I remember
exactly
my parents taking me to Redemption Rock when I was a kid.
Right.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. What is it?
I had never been until Mary brought us down there. We not only went over there, we went we'll tell you about the Lancaster Frog story in a minute. But we went over there. We went over to Northfield. We went over to Athol.
And we went to New Braintree.
New Braintree.
Yep.
Yeah. So we're filming in a number of different locations, and actually all the locations. And what's great about Mary was she's really familiar with this story. Mary, didn't you read about a half a dozen different books because you wanted to get the perspective of different authors? I'm talking about this young lady.
A lot of different books. Several books were written back in that same day that talked about her captivity afterwards. So we have not only her words for what happened, but we have the words of a militiaman and a couple of people in Boston. So it kind of rounds out the entire story. And then so there was a lot of reading behind this and to get ready to understand who she was and what she was going through.
So as being a camera guy now, which was a blessing for Mary, like she's been a blessing to me, helping me out my projects. I was struggling with the technical wording of everything. And Mary's a technical writer. She corrects everything, and everything goes up on the timeline 110%. So I'm the camera guy. I'll set up the camera on location, and Mary will stand in front of the rock or the side of it.
That's good.
And she'll tell a little bit of a story and put it all together. Now, the only thing we're having a hard time with is like when we went up to Lancaster this past week, the noise distortion in the background was really terrible. So what Mary will do is she'll do a nice voiceover and record the audio, and I'll swap it out. And then I'll find some bird chirping noise or whatever, and make it sound like it's authentic and drop it under your voice.
Well, you're giving away secrets now.
Some places are harder to get
Some
to
are really
than
tough.
others.
One of the hardest is right in downtown Leominster and on the Common. When you're trying to shoot there and you're trying to talk, it's almost impossible. You got to put a mic close up.
That's right.
We're going to be learning how to do that too.
But these are things that you guys are working out, which is really cool. But the Mary Rowlandson story, I think that's a fantastic story. I'm looking forward to that. I hope down the line there's a book. I hope you do a book or something down the line.
So we're gonna, so we wanted to tell you what happened in our excursion. I felt I'm sure Kyle and Mary's seen that Indiana Jones movie a few times. I felt like Indiana Jones that day. So now I'm thinking about picking up an Indiana Jones hat.
You should, Ron.
Maybe a keep
make
around
it.
my belt
That
when we
would
go
be
out on these
perfect.
excursions. But
Ron knows that I've gone into some hairy places
yeah.
to find the right monuments that I want to find.
Yeah.
And I wanted to take Ron to the old burial ground in Lancaster.
Okay.
It's kind of a tricky place to find.
Yeah, tell me about
Probably
it.
on purpose. They don't want everybody going there. But you have to go down to a canoe launch and you have to go through the woods a little bit to find it. So Ron and I
and my wife.
dragged Donna, Ron's wife, along with us. She's great. She's a trooper, right? We went down there last week to do a little filming and had no idea that we were going to come into contact with so much local fauna.
Well, how it was there was this frog pond, and the thing was really, really huge, and you only had this much room to get around it. So Mary's walking around it. She almost slipped a few times, and I grabbed a hold of her, and I almost slipped. So she grabbed a hold of the camera, like the three of us, like a safety
Smart.
rope,
Save the camera first.
walking around the frog pond.
Yeah.
So
And we turned around and we looked, and there was one frog, and then all of a sudden there was 100 frogs all peeping out of the water at once. So that was not a good memory.
No, then my wife told me that night she had a nightmare about frogs attacking her.
Well, that's some of the issues of this job. You know, you never know when you're going to be
That's
attacked
right.
by hornets or frogs.
Not only did we get around the frog pond, mind you, there was about maybe 100 yards that we had to travel through to get to the stone market that Mary was looking for.
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself, this is a crazy lady. She went up there and she went up there all these places by herself without nobody with her. So, but we found it, and so I filmed everything. Everything was kosher. So when we made the careful trip back to the car, I hugged the car because I was so happy. And she took a photograph of that. That was pretty funny, huh?
Yep. And we didn't fall down. We didn't lose the camera.
Yeah, we didn't lose the camera. Yeah.
Well, you do a lot of work now. We only got a couple more minutes. Is there anything you want to mention before we wrap it up?
Well, what do you think, Mary? What is anything going on for projects? What do we got coming on for projects?
Well, we got some ideas, right? So we never stop having more ideas.
Good.
So we're constantly making changes to our show and the direction that we're going in.
Yeah.
We've got really great video for September, but I want people to know and to look at our August show, because we have some really special and new things that we did in the August edition. That's coming up tomorrow.
There was one special event that I probably be putting it up this week. That August 9th with Mr. Winthrop Blair.
Oh yeah.
Tell the audience about that,
Yeah,
Mary.
well, it was really special to be able to find a really great artifact, and there was a letter from a man who was killed in World War II, and it was the letter to his brother, and it was written a week before he was killed from the foxhole. And just to be able to read that and think about the life that man had and the situation that he was in and the importance of that kind of service, and it gave it a really personal feel. And I think that's one of the things that we tried really hard to do, is try to bring a personal feel to the events and the places we go to.
Yeah, and then I was kind of like I felt like Jack Nicholson on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, because I was looking for a photograph of Mr. Lear.
Couldn't find a photo
and I couldn't
of him.
find one. And then I got lucky. So I was so thankful that I had scanned all those yearbooks. I found him in the 1937 yearbook. And there was a capture on him that he had a nickname by the name of Peanut, and he was involved in the Aviation Club of Leominster back in the time. So that came all in on a timeline, but Mary reading the voiceover, and I put some nice soft military music underneath it. We did a super job.
Those types of details that people like, because they can relate immediately to it, you know. And some of them have local connections, family connections.
But I will tell the audience one thing, that if you're watching that particular sequence, have the tissue, because even when I'm watching it, it's really touching, moving. And then did you want to tell them about how we did the August calendar, how we ended it?
Yeah, the mausoleum.
The mausoleum. Go ahead. Tell me the mausoleum.
It's going to have to be quick. Go ahead.
Okay, Ron had this great idea. We were at the Evergreen Cemetery. He said, if only we could film inside the mausoleum. So later on, he did get the call, but he texted me about it, and instead of sending mausoleum, he texted Mausoleum, and I just fell over laughing in my chair. He said, "Where are you? Where are you?" And I'm like, I couldn't even answer on my phone. It was too funny.
Very good.
And
yeah.
I think that led to a lot more funny things happening in the mausoleum. So August's show has a lot of funny things in the mausoleum.
Great.
Yeah, so I just wanted to thank the nice folks at the Evergreen Cemetery for letting us go in there, but with due respect, they didn't want to disrespect the people that were buried there and their families. But Mary and I did a funny little outtake with a ghost figure at the end. I just wanted to put that out
You're
there.
classy people, so we know there's respect there.
It wasn't done to hurt anybody,
Right,
but it was just done in fun to have fun. That's all it was.
I'm getting the red flashing light, which means I have to wrap this show up.
Okay.
I want to thank you both for coming on,
Well, thank you
and
for
we'll
having
do this
us,
again in the
Carl.
future. When you get some more information, we'll relate it.
Yeah.
So thank you all for watching Cityscope.
Good. How do you think?